Hello, my dear students. Welcome to another session of our history channel, our history e-class. This time we are going to study about the influence of philosophy and science. Now, under the influence of Greek philosophy and science, some Islamic philosophers and scientists tried to look for an alternative vision of God and the universe. And during the 7th century, the remains of the Greek culture could still be found, though it was slowly dying away. In the schools of Alexandria, Syria, and Mesopotamia, which were once part of Alexander's empire, Greek philosophy, mathematics, and medicine continued to be taught along with other subjects. Then the Umayyad and the Abbasid caliphs, they carried out translation of Greek and Syriac books into Arabic. They got Christian scholars to read these books and then translate it into Arabic so that the people of that region could also understand and gain from the information in these texts. Al-Mamun was the Abbasid Caliph, the 7th Abbasid Caliph. He supported a library cum institute of science. It was called Bait al-Hikmah. Now, Bait means house in Arabic and Hikmah means wisdom. So, this house of wisdom, he encouraged information over here. He believed in science and reasoning. He was very curious himself to learn what is there in the texts which are found in different parts of the world. So, he got scholars to translate and gather information about these texts. The works of Aristotle. Now, Aristotle was a very famous Greek philosopher. His works, they tried to understand his philosophy. Then, Ptolemy was a mathematical and astronomical. He had written a mathematical and astronomical treatise on motion of stars and planets in his book called Almagest. Then Euclid, who is known as the father of geometry, his element on geometry and number theory. All this were very, very important works and they were translated. Then scholars with a theological bent of mind, such as a group known as Mutazila, they use Greek logic and method of reasoning, which was known as Kalam, to defend the Islamic beliefs. Then there was also influence of Indian philosophy and science. Indian works on astronomy, mathematics and medicine were also translated into Arabic. Now, Ibn Sina was a doctor by profession and also a philosopher at the same time. Now, he did not believe in the resurrection of the body on the day of judgment. That means he did not believe that on the final day of judgment, all the dead will rise up and then their final judgment will be done and they will be sent to heaven and hell. He just believed that what is life, that is life on this earth. So, because of this, he faced lots of opposition from the theologians. But his medical writings were widely read, and the most important was Al-Qanun fil Tib. It was a canon on medicine. Now, canon means some accepted law or rules or principles according to which something is judged. So, his book was on medicine. It was about a 1,000,000-word manuscript which had about 760 drugs, medicines, which were used by the pharmacists. And in this, along with all this, he had also written about his experiments that were conducted in hospitals. Hospitals in their language was known as Bimaristan, a place where the Bimar would stay. Now, Ibn Sina was also one of the pioneers who spoke of hand washing and quarantine, which today we keep hearing about it. He had told at that time. The canon points out the importance of dietetics, that is healing through dietary regulation. Today all of us realize that we need to bring in change in our diet to heal certain diseases and ailments. So he had spoken long time back. The influence of the climate and environment on health and the contagious nature of some diseases. He had talked about it long back. His canon was used as a textbook in Europe, and it was so famous in Europe, and the author Ibn Sina was known in Europe as Avicenna. And this Al-Qanun fi al-Tib, actually I'll tell you the meaning. Al-Qanun, Qanun is law or principles, and Al-Tib means medicine. That means the principles of medicine. So people would refer to this while treating patients. And other people also read this book for knowledge and information. And just before his death, the scientist and poet Omar Khayyam, he was believed to have been reading this canon because his gold toothpick was found between two pages of the chapter on metaphysics. Metaphysics is a philosophy that deals with nature of existent truth and knowledge. So he was a philosopher, so he was interested in reading that. Now this is a picture of Omar Khayyam. He was a poet as well, and he wrote some rubai that we'll talk about it. And one famous rubai is mentioned here. The wind of life is sometimes fierce. Overall life, however, is good, and it's not scary when your bread is black. It is terrible when your soul is black. So some soul stirring poems or rubai he wrote for the people to maybe introspect. Then adab is literary and cultural refinement. In those days, fine language and creative imagination were something which were really appreciated. And other forms of expression included poetry, which was known as nazm. Nazm was an orderly arrangement of words, and prose or nadar, where scattered words were put together to express something. Now, the qualities that raised a person's communication to the level of adab led to was known as literary and cultural refinement. The most popular poetic composition in this pre-Islamic origin was ode. Ode is called to write something in praise of someone. It was known as qasida. The poets of the Abbasid period used to glorify the achievements of their patrons. They used to write praises of their rulers or the time when they went for war or any good thing they would have done. So they were written in praise of them. The 9th century onward, the scope of adab was expanded. It included biographies. It included manual of ethics, the good behavior, which is known as akhlaq. Then rules and principles and guidance to princes on statecraft, which was known as mirrors for princes. And above all, history, that is tarikh, and also geography. These were also subjects of literary works at this point of time. Now, Abu Nawas was of Persian origin. He broke new ground by composing classical poetry. Now, he broke new ground because he wrote poetry on subjects which up till now were not touched upon, and they were subjects which were on pleasures which were forbidden by Islam, like themes on wine and love. He tried to write on those themes. At this time, New Persian was developed. The Old Persian was known as Pahlavi. It was the language of ancient Iran. And in this New Persian, a lot of Arabic vocabulary was included. The Samanid court poet Rudaki was considered the father of New Persian poetry. Now, Rudaki wrote some ghazals and also some rubai. But formation of sultanates in Khurasan and Transoxiana took New Persian to great cultural heights, because more and more poets and scholars used to write in that language, new language. New Persian poetry included new forms such as short lyrical poems, and these were called the ghazal and the qatrain, rubai were of 4 lines and plural of rubai. One 4 line set was called rubai, and many of those were called rubaiyat. And rubai is a 4 line stanza in which first 2 lines set the stage. That means the first 2 lines create the background. Then third line is very calmly and finely poised, and the fourth delivers the point. The essence of it, what they want to convey, was mentioned in the fourth line. It can be used to express the beauty of a beloved. Now, various subjects could be used in rubai. It could be the beauty of the beloved, it could be praise of a patron or a ruler, and it also could express philosophical thoughts. The rubai reached its zenith, that means the topmost level. It reached its highest in the hands of Umar Khayyam. He was a poet, an astronomer, and a mathematician, and he kept moving from Bukhara, Samarkand, Isfahan, and between these places. Persian later became the language of administration and culture in India. So these rubai and ghazal, all these things are known to people in India also, because when the Mughals came in India, their court language was Persian. So that's how Persian developed in India also, and people learned Persian. Of course, now not many people know, but in that period, Persian was very, very popular. Now this is a picture of a rubai of Umar Khayyam, and you can see the first 2 lines will create the background. The beyond the earth, beyond the farthest skies, I try to find heaven and hell. So what they are trying to say, that here you get to know that they are trying to find heaven and hell. Third is finely poised. Then I hear a solemn voice. And the fourth line will tell the point that heaven and hell are inside. That means good and bad are within us. So that's how Umar Khayyam wrote Rubai. Then a number of books were collected together, and very important part of literature are these books. Firdausi's Shahnama is actually a masnavi or an epic poem. It took him about 30 years to complete the Shahnama. It is a book of kings. Shah means king, and Nama is a story about the kings. So it has about 50,000 couplets. Couplets are 2 liners, which has become a masterpiece of Islamic literature. It is a collection of traditions and legends, and it has various legends and stories. One is about Rustam. Then it poetically depicts Iran from creation up till the Arab conquest. Then Ibn Nadim, he was a Baghdad bookseller, and his book called The Catalogue, which is Kitab al-Firist. Firist is a catalogue or a list of something, and Kitab is a book. He describes a large number of works which were written in prose for the moral education. So you see, many of these stories, when you read, it gives some kind of moral teaching. So some of these were for moral education, and others for entertainment and amusement of readers. The oldest of these is a collection of animal stories, and these animal stories, one of them which is very popular is Kalila wa Dimna. Kalila and Dimna were names of 2 jackals who were the leading characters, and this seems to be an Arabic translation and a Pahlavi version of the famous animal stories of India, which are known as Panchtantra. The most widespread and lasting literary works are the stories of hero adventurers, such as Alexander or Iskandar, and Sindbad the sailor, and also about unhappy lovers, Laila Majnu, in this story, where Laila is the woman and Majnu is actually, his name is Qais, and because he was so madly in love with Laila that people in that area would call him the madman or Majnoon. Now this is Alif Laila wa Laila. Now some of these stories you're all very familiar with. Story of Sindbad the sailor, Arabian Nights, and in that you can see the jinn, Aladdin's jinn that came out from his magic lamp, and then you can see Aladdin on the flying carpet, and the third one you can see Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, which is a story where Ali Baba enters cave, and he says Khulja Simpson, and the caves open, and then he sees these thieves have so much of riches in there which they must have stolen. So these stories which we've been reading as children for long time, these were part of 1001 Nights. So it was Alif Laila wa Laila. They are also known as Arabian Nights because it's on the background of Arabia. It's a collection of stories told by a single narrator, Scheherazade. She would tell stories to her husband every night, and these stories were then put together in this collection of stories. It was originally in Indo-Persian, and then it was later translated into Arabic in Baghdad in the 8th century. Then more stories were added during the Mamluk period in Cairo, and these stories depict human beings of different types, various types of human beings and their different nature. Some are generous, some are very gullible, some are stupid, some are very clever and crafty. So all these stories were basically intended to educate people and also to entertain them. Then Kitab al-Bukhla was a book of misers. Then Jahiz of Basra collected amusing anecdote about misers and also analyzed greeds. So you can see the massive collection of literature at this time, and all were intended to convey some message, some knowledge, some philosophy, medicine, on various topics, history, various topics. These books are written, so they were translated into many languages, and also they are a treasure even today. So much for this class, and then we will continue with our next class later. Have a nice day.